Thank you, Madam Chair. You are live now.
All right. Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to the February 18th, 2021 meeting of Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee. If you are looking for the Bachelor, you are on the wrong channel. We're going to start this off by going through our list of committee members just to make sure that everyone's audio and video works. And we're going to start out with Councillor Sam Austin. Councillor Austin, are you with us, sir?
I'm here, Ms. Chair, ready to go.
All right, Councillor Cuddle.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am here. Beautiful.
Councillor Lovelace.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I was going to say
Excellent.
Mr. Chair. Sorry.
Councillor Purdy.
Good morning.
And Councillor Smith.
Here and ready.
All right, excellent. And I know that we do have several staff on the line with us today. So I guess we're going to need an approval of the minutes of the January 28th meeting. Do we have a mover to approve the minutes?
I'll move, Lindell.
All right, Councillor Smith moves. The seconder?
Lovelace seconds.
Councillor Lovelace the second. Any notices or any changes that need to be made? I see Councillor Cuddle with her hand up. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having an issue here with my screens, but I believe that it says that Councillor Purdy moved for the presentation on the Green Network Plan, and that was actually, I made the motion for the information report.
Okay. The clerk's office will note that and make the change in the minutes. Any other changes or amendments that need to be made? Seeing none, looking for a vote on the approval of minutes as amended. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, approval of the order of business and additions and deletions. Mr. Clerk, do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The clerk's office has received no request for additions or deletions as of this time.
All right, thank you very much. Looking now to approve the order of business as presented. Looking for a mover?
I so moved, Lovelace.
Councillor Lovelace to move, and I see Councillor Cuddle to second. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carried. We have no business arising out of the minutes. This is a call for declaration of conflict of interest. Now is the time if you have one for today. And not seeing anybody move, we'll move on to motions of reconsideration. There are none. Motions of rescission, there are none. And consideration of deferred business, none. Notices of tabled matters, none. And now we're getting on to the good stuff here. 10.1, we have correspondence. Mr. Clerk, sir, I know we have plenty of that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, there have been several pieces of correspondence. I believe we have circulated those now to all members of the community.
All right, excellent. And any petitions from members of the committee? All right, not seeing any. We'll move on to 10.3 presentations. And first up, we have 10.3.1, a presentation on the Fair Wage Living Wage Framework. And joining us this morning is Brad Smith. And Brad is the Executive Director of Mainland Building Trades. We've got Robert Shepard, who is the President of NSCLRA, and Jack Wall, the President of Cape Breton Building Trades. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to CPED.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Well, listen, I will turn the floor over to you. You have the attention of committee. Looking forward to hearing your presentation. Chair. All right. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity today. And as you've introduced Bob Shepard, President of the NCLRA, and Jack Wall, President of the Cape Breton Building Trades. And together, the building trades and the NCLRA work in partnership under an umbrella organization called Build Right Nova Scotia, which represents the unionized sector of the ICI construction industry, the institutional, commercial, and industrial sector. And we're presenting today in support of your fair wage, living wage framework And as we believe it's an important tool to address the systemic issues we face in our society. And so if you can go, the clerk can go to slide number 2. I'll just give you a little bit of a breakdown of the industry. In this slide, I think the important note around this is that there is no one voice in the construction industry. There's many different parts of the construction industry. And so as I've identified is that we kind of represent the left-hand side of that slide, and we build the offices, the schools, the hospitals, apartments, and any of those types of buildings, and maintain the related infrastructure for that. Now, in that sector, in the ICI sector, there's roughly about 15,000 workers, and in this group, Build Right Nova Scotia Group, represents about 350 contractors and a total of about 11,000 workers of the 15,000. And so when we look at that, we look at a partnership. The building trades are accountable and have a mandate to supply the labor to our contractors on a per project basis. And I think we live together and work together very closely, and Bob will touch on that in a little while, because we need to work closely together to support each other in a competitive environment. So that gives you just a bit of a breakdown of the industry and what we represent of the industry. But as I say, the most important point is there is no single voice. There's multiple voices, and we are the voice of the unionized construction sector in the industrial commercialized sector. So we'll go to that slide number 3. What does a fair wage and living wage mean for the ICI sectors? Well, the way I would describe it is that the lowest bid is not always the best value. When we're looking at some of the systemic issues we're dealing with our society, in terms of income and quality and things like that, we believe that the lowest bid is not the best value, and that while price-driven procurement implies accountability to the taxpayer, it rarely delivers the best value to the taxpayer and our economy as a whole. We believe that you need to look at the value of the whole supply chain and the whole project over a period of time. If you look at it from the long-term investment, if you look at the workers, workers shouldn't have to work 2 jobs to make the ends meet. And they should, when you look at that, income is the biggest determinant of health. And I know that the councillors on this call are on the front line of many of the impacts of poverty and the systemic issues in our society. And we believe that you either pay now or you pay later with compound interest. So when evaluating what is the best value for construction, it's not just the lowest price. Other factors need to be worked into that, and how that supports the community. As I like to say, optimizing the expenditure to build both the infrastructure and the community the infrastructure is there to serve. And there's many different studies on the importance of, we call them CBAs, which is community benefit agreements, of which fair and living wages is a component. And they typically, depending on the measures you look at, but for every dollar spent, if you look at the long-term value, it's about $1.80 in economic value. If we go to slide number 4, just a little bit of history about how procurement policies and practices have evolved. And what I'd say to the council is you're consistent with the trends on procurement, and particularly when you look at, it used to be best value, best quality, lowest price, and avoid risk. And now we in the 70s to 2000, we introduced environment, and now we're looking at social value. And there's many, many examples of how social value and how public sector procurement is being used to advance good public policy. And there's also private sector examples, as many of the largest investment firms in the world now have responsible contractor policies, and that they're when they look at evaluating work and projects that they're doing, they have responsible contractor policies that include things like paying fair wage and social and environment. So you are on trend. You are doing where the market is going, where we should be going, and how we should be addressing some of these systemic issues and dealing with these inequality issues. So I would say that what you're doing and the direction you're going is the right direction to be going. Now, if we go to slide number 5, there is actually a fairly strong business case around doing this type of paying fair wage or living wages. And so typically the contractors who currently pay living wages are more likely to bid on HRM projects where they do not have to discount the value of their workers to be competitive. So you would find that some contractors would not even bid on some of the projects or some of the work that HRM would have out there because they can't compete when they have to compete just on wages. And by bringing in sort of that leveling that playing field for the wages, then you must compete on how you are doing the quality, you're competing on safety, you're competing on delivering on the project. And also, you keep in mind, to get that higher productivity from the workers, you need to invest in training. You need to invest in apprenticeship. And in a competitive labor environment, which we're dealing with in the supply and demand, it helps attract new workers to the industry. Now, the unionized construction sector is represented by Build Right Nova Scotia. We pay living wages and more determined through a collective bargaining process, and all the workers and all the contractors are treated equally. On slide number 6, just to highlight some opportunities down the road for the future, the province of Nova Scotia is actually taking a leadership role. And in their framework for social prosperity, they identified that virtually every government department in Nova Scotia has to do something with social prosperity. And local workforce development is considered an investment in the local community and the local economy. So just so you're aware that the province of Nova Scotia, which is doing some of the largest infrastructure build coming up in Cape Breton, and then it'll be happening on the mainland announcements later on. So they were requiring, that 25% of all the trade and craft hours be performed by registered apprentices, and 10% of those craft hours must be performed by underrepresented groups. And all the trade and craft hours work to support certified tradespeople or journeypersons or registered apprentice, and 10% of the workforce must consist of underrepresented groups. This is important because there's often talk about diversity inclusion and the importance of it, but without accountability, without measures, without transparency, it's just too easy to avoid meaningful changes. And it's an old business acumen, what you measure, you move. And so when you start putting in standards like living wages and fair wages and things around apprenticeships and stuff like that, you're putting measures, you're putting transparency that everybody's got to play in the same field, and that helps raise the tide for everyone. That helps move things forward in a positive way. And so when we saw the announcement about the fair wages and living wages and some of the other work that's being done around procurement, we just felt it was important to understand that often it's much easier to criticize than create, and we believe that you're on the creation side of moving things in the right direction. And that we wanted to make sure that our voice was heard, that we're supporting what you're doing. We believe it's right for workers. We believe it is right for our society. It's a way of raising the bar for our society. And we also recognize there's going to be challenges on the way anytime you're starting to do new policies and new directions and things like that. But just want to applaud your courage in moving forward in a proactive way, and to tell you that with the directions you're moving with this are recognized, they are important, and they are a tool in the toolbox to address some of the systemic issues. So I think I only have just a moment or two left, so maybe I'll just ask whether Bob or Jack just wanted to add into anything that I might have missed in this brief presentation.
Bob here. Thanks for the opportunity this morning. As Brad said, the CLRA, which stands for the Construction Labor Relations Association, we're the accredited representative of all of the unionized employers in the ICI sector. There's 350, there's actually more than 350 employers. Over 200 of these unionized employers work in HRM. And as Brad said, we are supportive of the living wage proposal. So we think it's a good step forward. We want our workers to live good lives and be healthy and be able to raise their family in our communities. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I return control to you, and if there's any questions or comments, we'd be happy to share whatever we can do to support what you're doing.
All right, that's great. Thank you very, very much, Brad Smith from Mainland Building Trades, and one of two people in this room that I think can safely say has an old Q104 painter cap in the back of a closet somewhere.
This is true. A couple decades ago, Madam Chair.
Yeah. We do have some questions from the committee. Councillor Austin, you had a question, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you to the presenters. It's good to see you, Brad, and outside the Sportsplex board from times past. Just a question for you. Of course, we did have the presentation from the management side of this at our last meeting. And I mean, one of the concerns that was raised there was that our policy would freeze out smaller businesses. I'm just wondering if you, I know you guys are the union side, but you're involved in the industry, whether or not you folks see any potential concerns in terms of impacts on the smaller contract operators out there in terms of operating with a living wage policy.
I might turn that.
Perhaps I could answer
Yeah.
that, Brad.
Yeah,
this is
please.
Bob
Thank you.
Shepard here. To answer the question, the CLRA represents 350 employers. We're an employer organization, and we represent the 350 employers in negotiations with the unions. So, as I say, we're an employer organization. We have employers that range from very large companies to very small companies. And all of our companies support, our organization and our companies pay living wages and are supportive of living wages. Does that answer your question? So yeah, we are an employer organization, and we're accredited to negotiate with the union on unions, 15 collective agreements, on behalf of all of the unionized employers in the ICI sector. So we recognize that competition is important, but we also recognize that you've got to pay a fair wage.
Yeah. How many employers did you say you represent?
350 province-wide.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think you broke it down as well to 11,000 out of the 15,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's important to note that everything we do, we have to do on a competitive basis. So we have to, our workers don't work unless our contractors win the bids. And the contractors can't win the bids unless our workers are doing this productively and safely. So we have to compete on productivity and safety in the market. And so we are interdependent of each other and support each other in that way.
All right, thank you. Councillor Smith, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Brad and crew, for presenting. And Councillor Austin spoke on the question I had, just wondering if it would have impacts on, from your understanding, in smaller businesses. So I won't ask that question. I'll just say thank you. And really, and you know, I don't want you to harp too much on the presentation we got last time, but do you, being able to speak on behalf of workers and you know, also the industry, do you see the disconnect between your position and the position of other groups that might not be for this? From, again, I don't want to focus on one organization in particular, but just in general, from your point of view to other point of views, why do you think there's a disconnect?
I can only speak to our position and why we support it. And Councillor, you're very familiar with Build Right and the work that we've done in community, particularly around Hope Blooms and United Way and many other organizations. We're very community focused. We're very ingrained in our community and support the community, and we see firsthand the impacts that you see firsthand on people that cannot have a dignified wage and working two jobs and things like that. So our position is that what you're doing is the right thing to do, and it's a path that we need to continue on, and we just want to support, we want to support you and let you know that you have some champions with you on this, because we think and believe it's the right thing to do.
Well, thank you for that, and again, thank you for all the work that you all do in our communities. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Cottle, you have a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation this morning. That was excellent, and I agree wholeheartedly that everyone should be able to earn a living wage and not have to work two jobs, and that I do see our procurement policy and process to date has been part of the problem in prioritizing the lowest bid without looking at kind of the bigger picture. So I'm excited that HRM is looking at changing some of those policies to create, you know, a better situation for the workers who are bidding on work with our city. So I just have a couple of questions. I mean, I know that the living wage is defined by the cost of living, and we see so many factors driving up the cost of living right now in Nova Scotia. You know, housing, food, cost of food, and, you know, just the things that we need to survive. And I'm just wondering, what do you consider a living wage? When you say living wage, what does that mean in terms of dollars and cents? And when you talk about the 10% of, you know, the underrepresented groups, I'm just wondering, like, who do you consider underrepresented, particularly in regards to the businesses in the industry you represent? And also, what percentage of the current workforce within your industry is made up of women?
Okay, so I think I heard about 3 questions there. So maybe I'll a couple quick ones. One is the living wage for us is really, we just follow what the we're typically above the living wage. So, but the living wage, as we understand it, would be set by the CCPA, or the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And they would look at a family of 2, I believe, with 2 income earners that can, you know, reasonably have under their definition, roof over the head, and able to do, you know, some basic things around making sure food and clothing and things like that. So I would leave that definition to them. The underrepresented groups in the construction industry would include women, and we have a number of programs to do that. We are not there. We're not even close to where we need to be there. And it depends on where you run into, but it's somewhere between 2 and 6%, where it should be upwards to 40 or 50%. So there's a number. We have the women in the trades. We've got Build Together. We've got a number of different programs. So there was a number of different programs in place that we support to try to increase that. And so we have a long ways to go on that. And the diversity and inclusion in the construction industry is not where it needs to be. And that's why, you know, that's why some of these programs like Living Wage and others are really so important for us to help to increase the diversity and inclusion in a traditionally male-dominated industry. And our industry would face some of the same challenges similar to law industries and accounting industries and other traditionally male-dominated. It's a systemic issue, as many systemic issues that we have, and we have a number of programs and working very hard to address that. And that's why when we start looking at the provincial procurement as a really good tool to help start moving that bar, so we can start getting some critical mass on the underrepresented groups to start a career in the trades. I'm not sure if I caught all 3 questions.
You did, actually. That was very good. I'm getting trained in posing multiple questions here, but you know, I just want to comment on that last piece about women in the trades, and it is a concern because you know, as you know, you so eloquently put, you know, we are creating. And it's harder to create than it is to criticize. But you know, one of the things I think we need to keep top in mind is that, you know, in looking at the industries where we're requiring a living wage, is mostly a male-dominated field. And when we look at things like catering, when we look at things like restaurants, when we look at the other industries which we have contracts with, you know, the more female-dominated industries, we're not seeing the same push for the living wage. And, you know, I think we just need to be mindful of that, and that we are, you know, how are we continuing to create a gap in income between you know, that has a gender bias to it. So, you know, I applaud efforts to get women into the trades, but, you know, just I think as an organization, we need to make sure that we are creating a level playing field in our policies. And okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Absolutely, but just as an example, some of the systemic issues, most construction sites open up at 7 o'clock. How many daycare facilities open at 6 o'clock? So there's many issues to address that, and we have a number of different programs looking at that. But you're absolutely right. It's just saying it. We actually have to support that with programs, and the apprenticeship agencies has a number of programs around that. The building trades and a lot of the contractors as well are all very focused on understanding that this is critical and we're not where we need to be. But you also identify that there are some traditional industries that are just low paying. Why does the not to go off on a tangent here, but why does a elementary school teacher make X? Well, a university professor who's typically male makes Y. They're both in the education process. So that's so many things in our society are challenged around that. And again, what you're doing is just one step, a meaningful step to start to address some of these issues.
Getting those
All
data
right.
answers. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Lovelace, you have a question.
Thank you. Yes, I do. And I also just wanted to say that I really do appreciate this presentation, but I wanted to note that I don't think the timing of daycares opening at 6 a.m. has any relevance, in the conversation. Certainly men and women both can drop their kids off to daycare. So, it shouldn't limit women, but I do want to say that I'm interested in, in your comment in regards to HRM following the provincial lead in requiring metrics and measurements on apprenticeship. I just want to focus a little bit on apprenticeship and whether or not you feel that the provincial requirements are adequate, or whether or not HRM should go above and beyond what we're seeing with those measurements and the programs and the metrics that are being used from a diversity inclusion perspective. And I think that apprenticeship truly is, and I think you'll agree with me, truly is the way into this industry, whether male or female. I think that looking at ways that HRM can strengthen and maybe go above and beyond what the province is doing with regards to apprenticeship. How do you feel about that?
Well, I might turn it over to Bob because there's a lot of research done on the numbers that the provincial is starting. So we want success in the early stages to get some momentum around that. But Bob, did you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think your last comment is appropriate, Brad. I mean, what we're doing on and it started with the hospitals in Cape Breton, where the requirement is that we have that 25% of the workforce on the site will be apprentices, and within the 25%, 10% of that of the apprentices have to be from underrepresented communities, and then there's an overarching requirement that 10% of the workforce has to be from underrepresented communities. So we've set these metrics, and there's penalties in place for non-achievement, and so it is these targets, while they might seem small, they've never been in place on a construction project or projects before. So we're starting with these metrics, and again, there's penalties associated with not meeting them. So contractors have signed up. They know they have to make the efforts to get the right mix of workforce in place so that we can, we'll call it, build our workforce of tomorrow, build a more inclusive workforce. I mean, our workforce is getting older. We need to, as Brad mentioned, it's male dominated, and it's white. And that does not reflect our society. So we're bringing in these metrics to try and improve diversity in our workforce. And again, we're starting out with numbers that may look smaller, but, they've never been in place before. And our hope is to build on that. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I do appreciate that exact example of that work site and breaking down that percentage. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I really appreciate hearing this, and also even the discussion around it with my colleagues. And I have been asking small business owners about this because I see both sides. I see the benefit and the risk, I guess, of something like this. And I'm just wondering if you can help me understand that the small business owners that I spoke to when talking about living wage, I mean, yes, well, I mean, gosh, been there, done that, struggling to make ends meet, working 7 days a week, taking every shift I can. It's a horrible way to live. Nobody wants that. Living wage is, you had mentioned dignity, of course. How does that impact the bottom line for small business owners? The business owners I spoke to said if this is forced on them, there is going to be two immediate results. One is the prices of their goods and services will have to raise. Will have to be will have to go up. And secondly, they're going to have to cut jobs. With this actually, so you represent a union that enforces this and does this. In the beginning stages or the initial stages of raising your pay, is that a real risk? Like, could this backfire and actually have more people out of work because of a pay increase? Because that would just be a horrible unintended consequence of a good intentioned policy. So just wondering, like, how did you guys get to be where you are in your union to pay living wage and even above living wage, and what were the risks involved in getting there?
Well,
go ahead,
Brad, if I could try and tackle that, the councillor's question. We agree on wages. We negotiate collective agreements on behalf of all of our employers with 15 different unions. And each union, the wage rates are different. You know, there are a lot of factors that impact on wages, from the market to, the business market to supply and demand and many other factors. But we negotiate. In fact, we're in the middle of negotiations right now with 15 unions. And, you know, we look at cost of living, we look at, again, the marketplace, and that will help us determine what we can afford as employers to pay for in terms of increases in wages and benefits. What the living wage does is it raises the floor. The floor right now in the construction business for non-union companies is a lot lower than it is for union companies. If you bring in the minimum wage and you raise the living, you demand a living wage be paid in construction when working for HRM, you're raising the floor. So the risk is when you're transitioning from less than the living wage to the living wage, that companies are locked into contracts that they have bid using lower rates. So in other words, if a small company has bid to HRM to do a contract and they're paying their workers $16 an hour, if they've all of a sudden now going to start and pay $21 an hour, then, you know, they could be in trouble for that delta, that $5 an hour. And so when you're making the transition, you'll have to look at the contracts that are in place with some of the smaller employers so that they can transition, I'll call it, from the lower wage to, I'll call it, the new living wage. So because you're increasing that floor, so it will impact on contracts that will transition. Am I explaining it clearly enough?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
right.
It's a transition. For me, it's a transition from, you know, old contracts to new contracts. You have to. That's the risk to the small employers.
So you're saying that HRM would have to work with the smaller companies to aid them in that transition so that they don't, you know, suddenly are in over their heads and.
Yeah, you'd have to make it effective contracts released from a date forward, right? You couldn't just say today everybody will pay a living wage. If you had contracts in place, you either have to change that the living wage didn't apply to. You either have to increase the value of the contracts to take that into account, or set some sort of date. Draw a line in the sand, say from this date forward, all contracts bid must pay a living wage. That would help the smaller companies that you're talking about that are likely non-union companies, they will be, transition to the living wage.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other, I was going to say callers on the line. I'm not seeing any other folks on the list to speak. So with that, we will thank our speakers, Brad Smith, Bob Shepherd, and Jack Wall. Really appreciate, sorry about the zoo back here. Very much appreciate you presenting today and bringing another perspective. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, so now we move on to number 11, information items brought forward. We've got 11.1, the Halifax Green Network Plan 2020 Progress Report, and Councillor Cuddle, you wanted to bring this forward for discussion. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'm lost in my multiple screens here again. I've never brought something forward before. So you just want me to speak to it, or do I have to make a motion to put it on the floor, or what?
No, you can just bring it forward. Oh, sorry, Simon, go ahead.
I just wanted to indicate, I believe that staff has prepared a presentation on this item at the request of the councillors that brought this forward. There's no motion associated with the report because it's an information report, but if it's always possible for standing committee to put a motion on the floor following discussion or engaging in any questions or discussion as it likes.
So, Councillor Cuddles, shall we perhaps get the presentation first, and then you can follow up with your discussion?
I think that's a great idea.
All right, sounds like a plan. Then we'll move forward then to the Halifax Green Network Plan, the annual progress report. And who do we have joining us from staff this morning?
Hi, Chair and Council. My name is Kathleen Frelick. I'm a planner with the regional planning team. I'm also the lead for the implementation of the Green Network Plan, so I'll give you sort of a quick presentation today. As part of my role, I'm responsible for providing an annual update on the progress being made to implement the plan. So the report that you received is a detailed summary of the status of all 79 of those action items. So I'm not going to speak to all of them. I'm going to give you a bit of a highlight for 2020.
All right, go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. And just before I get started, I just wanted to let everyone know, obviously this report represents work from across the organization. So while I'm certainly happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation, and I also have staff from planning and from Parks and Recreation here available to answer any questions. If we have questions about a specific project update, we may need to reach out to the many staff who provided these updates. So and follow up at that time. Can I get the next slide, please? So just to provide some background, the Halifax Green Network Plan was adopted by Council in 2018. It identifies and provides recommendations on the protection of open spaces and connections across the municipality. Essentially what this means is that it identified open spaces that were valuable for environmental, recreational, cultural, economic, and community shaping reasons. It then provided recommendations for policy changes, projects, partnerships, and other types of initiatives that would support the health and protection of these lands. Just as a quick disclaimer, there's a bit of a misconception that the Halifax Green Network Plan is more of a regulatory tool and that it, in essence, protects these lands. It provides direction for how these lands can be better protected. Can I get the next slide, please? So as I mentioned, there are 79 actions. These include general guidance, which are considered during decision-making and policy development on sort of an ongoing basis, as well as some specific tasks that have some timelines associated with them. There are 4 main tools that have been used to implement these action items. Those include land use planning, park management, project work, and obviously partnerships, because the municipality does not work on environmental protection on its own. Next slide, please. So from a land use planning perspective, a number of initiatives were initiated and work was moving forward in 2020 to move forward with the recommendations of the Green Network Plan. One of the main initiatives is that the regional plan review was initiated in February of 2020. And through this process, we'll be using the goals of the Halifax Green Network Plan to establish land use policy and set up additional study. The plan and bylaw simplification program has also been ongoing. Notably, obviously, Center Plan has been coming forward, and work continues on that plan. Throughout that process, the recommendations of the Halifax Green Network Plan have been considered. But probably more significantly, the Halifax Green Network Plan is going to be a major factor as we set up for the suburban and rural plans, as these are sort of the areas where the most of the open space that was identified are located. So it'll play a major role as we frame up our approach to those plans. In June of 2020, Halifax was adopted, and this plan, while focusing very much on climate, also plays a role in environmental protection. And it considered the recommendations of the Halifax Green Network Plan throughout its development. And in the report, you can see that a number of the action items of Halifax also sort of speak to the recommendations of the Green Network Plan. So these two plans really do work together. And finally, work on sharing our stories is ongoing. And sharing our stories is the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan. And the role that this plan is going to be playing is providing additional direction on the protection of cultural landscapes, which were identified, and an approach was sort of developed through the Green Network Plan, but the Sharing Our Stories plan is going to take that a step further as well. Next slide, please. For park network management, park master plans were developed for Goresbrook Park, Eastern Passage Common, Lake Echo District Park, and Viscount Run Park. We've also developed an active transportation wayfinding system that is going to be piloted this year. HRM has also supported 24 community gardens that are located on municipal lands. But I think obviously the biggest impact on parks in 2020 was the pandemic and this increased interest in the role and the importance of parks and open space as we have been forced to adapt to a new sort of lifestyle. And we've been staff have been very interested in participating in those conversations and learning more about sort of the role that parks have played. Next slide, please. In terms of project work, the Halifax Green Network Plan database, which is all of the mapping that was created through the plan, is now available for download on HRM's open data portal, and it's there for public use. An integrated pest management, either a best practices or a policy guide, apparently they're not quite sure yet, is going to be developed to assist with the management of invasive species, and work on that document has started. Naturalization projects are being undertaken across the municipality as part of a pilot program. Several active transportation initiatives that have linked together have been completed or are underway. And work on floodplain studies for the Sackville Rivers floodplain and for the Shubenacadie watershed is also ongoing. Next slide, please. In terms of partnerships, the municipality has been working with Halifax Water and Nova Scotia Environment to use green infrastructure in streetscaping as well as parks projects. The municipality also agreed to contribute $750,000 to assist the Nova Scotia Nature Trust in purchasing lands associated with the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes area. The municipality, and specifically me, has been participating on the Nova Scotia Connectivity Network. This organization is a group that has brought together organizations from across the province that deal with wildlife corridors and network connectivity, and trying to take this work from sort of an individual area scale up to a provincial scale, and sort of keeping each other aware of the work that has been taking place. As well as the municipality has been supporting active transportation initiatives on provincial lands as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, that's just sort of a quick overview. The report itself does have a detailed update for all 79 of those actions, but I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you very much. So I guess I will go back to Councillor Cuddle, and if you want to kick off the conversation and bring forward your points for discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kathleen, for that that update on the Green Network Plan. First of all, I just want to say that I appreciate the immensity of this initiative. And that, you know, it is something that I've been following for several years now, and have participated in some of the workshops that took place in the early days of forming the Green Network Plan. And I think it's a really, really important initiative, gosh, for so many reasons, many of which you mentioned, but particularly in defining our land use patterns, protecting sensitive environmental areas, and in particular our watersheds. You know, one of the challenges that I'm having as a new councillor, and I guess as a citizen, is understanding how all of these plans, some of which you mentioned, like the Halifax plan, how they're all coming together, and how priorities are being set in terms of action, and where we need to be focusing our efforts. You know, I look at Halifax, I look at the Green Network Plan. You talked about cultural landscapes, and part of that falls under the Heritage Plan and the work that Aaron Murnaham is doing, which relies on changes to the Provincial Heritage Act for enabling cultural landscapes. You know, in District 11, we also have like the Western Common Master Plan, which is like over 60 kilometers of trail that's 6 feet wide, built on a gravel bed, enough to support a dump truck. And, you know, there's which kind of boggles my mind because of the impact that that's going to have on the environment, and the need we have right now to address these things before they continue down a path of, you know, they're rolling. These things are rolling, and I'm not understanding how everything is connecting to ensure what we're doing today is not based on outdated ideas, but current knowledge and thinking, and being done properly. So, you know, that's why I asked for this update, and I don't know if you can kind of speak to how and I appreciate the immensity of this, but you know, what staff is dedicated to this and ensuring that we're moving forward with the actions, and how are those actions being prioritized, and what can you, I don't know, any other comments you might have about how we can make sure this is a success?
All right, thank you, Councillor Cuddle. Kathleen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly at the base level, the easiest answer to your question is that all of the priorities plans that have been being completed are now going to be fed into the regional plan review, and that's how they're going to be enacted into policy. If you look into the Green Network Plan, all of the policies around land use planning changes and things like that do indicate that that is the route that was planning to be taken. I think that it's there's definitely still some work to be done from the perspective of, obviously, the Green Network Plan is a landscape level plan. So it's providing recommendations for, the landscape. And our job now is to sort of take that bigger picture thinking and try to figure out what tools we have to influence site level planning and policy. So the Green Network Plan, Halifax, the Culture and Heritage Priorities, Sharing Our Stories, all of these plans and their recommendations are coming in through the regional plan review, and that's sort of where they're all going to be put into or used to guide our decision making. I'm not sure if that answered all of your question, but that was the idea behind the plan.
Obviously a lot of detail in there that would take us down a big rabbit hole, but I think you've demonstrated that you have a bigger picture of how they're coming together, and you have this mechanism through the regional plan. So that's encouraging to hear and to know about and to kind of share with my other colleagues. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. This was really helpful to kind of walk us through this. I concur with my colleague, Councillor Cuddle. I'm still trying to understand how this is prioritized. An example of that, of this question, is that we have developed a park master plan for Viscount Run, whereas we have all kinds of other more established subdivisions that do not have a park master plan. District 13, is a great example of kind of the vastness of parks that are not within the urban service area, and so because we're outside the boundary, it just seems like it's a little bit of the Wild West as far as expectation for even the wildlife corridor. I'm looking at action item, I think it is 34, with regards to Highway 113. That wildlife corridor is extremely important to advance should that highway come online, but yet there's no real sense of where the discussions are and how that's going to create a huge impact within the communities, to create a wildlife corridor under this huge overpass that's going to be changing our communities. And so while it sits on our list, looking for guidance, I'm just looking at this thinking how many other of these action items really are dependent upon other levels of government. And I'm also wondering about Parks Canada, which doesn't seem to be in here as a partner or a resource really, whereas they have exceptional resources within their organization to be able to go to and use those resources. So I'm just wondering whether or not we are going to be advancing our partnership with Parks Canada. Where are we at with creating a larger vision for HRM when it comes to wildlife corridor? And also, from an inventory perspective, how are we prioritizing the inventory that we have and determining who gets a Parks Master Plan and who doesn't? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Kathleen?
Okay, I'm going to try to answer a few of those. I will probably hand you over to Parks and Recreation staff for sort of the parks planning, master planning part of that question.
Sounds good.
Perfect, thank you. In terms of actions that are based on other levels of government, certainly it is something that we are aware of and are working on. We are, in some cases, a little bit dependent on their priorities as well. So certainly continuing to work and to build those partnerships is a large part of my role. And, working with the networks that we've been able to establish and things like that. I don't believe that Parks Canada, I'll let Parks speak to what our relationship is with Parks Canada. But certainly we do have conversations and are trying to continue to enhance our relationship with provincial level decision making around those wildlife corridors, and specifically around highway construction and things like that. So it's an ongoing and developing relationship, is what I'll say, and we're working on it. in terms of where we at for where we are at from a larger vision of the wildlife corridors, as I mentioned, a lot of the work of the Green Network Plan is going to be reviewed through the regional plan review. So as a result, we sort of identified where potential corridors are and where potentially very important corridors are. And now we have to take that work, it's at a very high level, and sort of bring it down to the ground and come up with policy around it, and probably do a lot more study around it. So that's why it has been included as part of the regional plan review, because it's a pretty significant chunk of research that still needs to be done to figure out what our approach is going to be. But that is how those recommendations are going to be implemented.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. And Councillor Smith, you're next, sir.
Sorry, I was hoping to get an answer on my Parks Canada question.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe I can help with that.
All right. Richard Harvey, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Harvey, Manager of Policy and Planning. I might expand if I could. Wherever there are crossovers with regards to other levels of government, we tend to be engaged with them. So, for example, on most of the matters to do with wilderness, it really is the province that we're often working with from a staff perspective. Of course, if there was any crossover with regards to Parks Canada and their holdings, we would be working with them as well. You also had a little bit of I think a sort of a second question, I think, with regards to how it is that the various parks master plans sort of materialize. We, as a department, have ongoing conversations with both communities and council as well in terms of trying to set some of those priorities. But it's really to the business planning process and our annual presentation to you as council, and then your affirmation in terms of the business plan, where it is that those different priorities would be set. So that's really how it sort of filters, you know, from, if you like, community staff and council, and then comes to regional council by way of those business plans.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right. You're good, Councillor Lovelace? Perfect. All right. Sorry about that. Councillor Smith.
That's fine. Really quickly, some of the questions that I wanted to ask were covered in the presentation, so thank you for that. Just the other piece, we've received a lot of correspondence on this in the last couple of days and even last week. So I'm just wondering if there's any response to some of the, you don't have to go into detail, but the overarching comment that we're seeing in this correspondence is the lack of implementation on the recommendation. So I'm just wondering if you can expand on some of the comments we're seeing there. And you spoke a little bit about moving forward, but maybe if there's anything you can say to help alleviate some of the concerns that we're hearing from folks.
I can certainly try.
Sure thing, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that, looking over the comments that we received, I think there's definitely some pretty reasonable requests that we can certainly look into. I think one of the biggest things, there's sort of a concern about the way in which the Green Network Plan is affecting development presently. I think that while certainly, as I mentioned, it's not a regulatory document, and that work is going to be taking place as we move forward, it is considered through plan amendment applications. We have done an amendment to the regional plan review so that it's considered through conservation design development. So there are impacts that it does have on current applications. So what I have taken from the correspondence that we received is that we need to continue our conversations with the Energy and Environment Group, who are putting together an environmental impact framework for staff reports, so that we can be a lot more clear about how the Green Network Plan has impacted the results or the recommendations in our staff reports. So that was one recommendation that I noted and definitely think is a good idea and would help to alleviate some of those concerns. I think certainly as we have moved forward with the implementation of the plan, most of the action items are part of larger projects. So when larger projects timelines are impacted, the implementation of those recommendations has also been impacted. So I can't speak to every item that may or may not be on schedule, but I think that generally speaking, we have been sure to make sure that everything is moving forward and is being included in those larger initiatives that the recommendations form a part of.
Okay, great. And I guess the last piece would be coming into budget. Well, currently we're in the budget. Are there any asks coming related to the Green Network Plan, or maybe even not just the Green Network Plan, but initiatives that inform the Green Network Plan? Are there any asks to add more resources, to add more bodies, or anything to help us deal with some of the timelines that we've missed that you're aware of?
I'm going to defer to my manager on this one.
All right.
Hi there, it's Kate Green.
Hey, Kate, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm the Regional Policy Program Manager, and certainly I think, Kathleen is our dedicated resource to the Green Network Plan, and we work really closely with folks across the organization. The Green Network Plan is a little different than some of the other priorities plans who sort of have full teams organized around them. We organize the Green Network Plan in such a way that it could be really realized through the Green Network Plan and bylaw simplification and ongoing strategic planning that Parks and Recreation are doing. So they're really relying on existing resources. But always with more resources, we can do more. But recognizing we have to kind of focus on different priorities and manage our resources accordingly. That is why it's been staffed the way it has been.
All right.
So because of that, we shouldn't expect to see any kind of over budget asks or anything changing in the budget okay.
Not at this point in time. There may be asks through the regional plan review process
Right.
as we sort of move forward with trying to implement the regional plan, but nothing at this point specific to the budget.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Cobble, you have a second question?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Smith just asked a couple of the questions I had about the correspondence that we received, and I just want to thank everybody who did send in correspondence about the Green Network Plan. I know you have all been involved in this initiative for a long time, and it's near and dear to your hearts. The questions I had, and it's kind of following up on what Councillor Smith was saying, is about kind of the staffing or the relationships, the structures that we need to have in place to ensure that this continues to move forward in a timely way, but also that recognizes its importance and its priority to the overall, development and protection of our municipality, particularly right now with just, this unprecedented growth that we are experiencing. So, well, Kathleen, I recognize you're the dedicated staff person to this within planning and development. Are there, in the other business units, do you have support? How does that work? I'm just really curious about how we're making this all happen.
I can take a stab at that, and Kate may need to step in. So the way that the Green Network Plan is written is a lot of the initiatives and work are part of work that other departments do. As you read through the report, obviously, we're working with active transportation, we're working with the Parks Department, we're working with engineering. All those different departments are doing different pieces of the recommendations of the Green Network Plan. So my job really is to make sure that all of these projects are still considering those recommendations. So I'm a bit of a filter, but obviously I believe resourcing in other departments, parks, for example, is important, and that they definitely have staff that are also working on this plan. So it's a bit of a, processes that the actions follow are all sort of ongoing in different departments, and it's just making sure that that the recommendations of the plan are considered and continue to move forward through those processes.
Yeah, because I mean, this coordinated. So my sound has just gone all wonky. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a massive coordinated effort here, and I just want to make sure that it's a priority in those other business units that you're working with too. And if there's something you need for support in that regard, it'd be just important to let us know. My final little question is about watershed protection, and I'm just wondering, like, are we in the regional plan? And I don't know if this comes through the Green Network plan, or it comes through the Halifax plan, or it comes through we also have the rural recreation plan that's coming up, which should be important to the Green Network plan too, right? But I'm just wondering about setbacks from watersheds. In any of this, is that going to be impacted? Are we looking at changing our current bylaws and requirements around that?
In terms of that work through from the various plans that have all referenced watersheds, I believe that is something that we are working on through the regional plan review.
Okay, maybe we can take that conversation offline. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you answering all these questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Not seeing any further questions on the board, but thank you so much to Kate and Kathleen for the update on the Green Network plan. So now we'll move on to 12.1 staff reports, and we have 12.1.1, the development of the 2022 to 27 economic strategy. And just a quick question for the clerk's office, do we have a presentation to go along with this, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to the committee. Yes, we do have a presentation, and staff is ready to provide it, I believe.
All right, and I see Councillor Lovelace, you have a question before we get started?
No, sorry, just, it's fine. I'll ask after the presentation. Thank you.
All right, excellent. All right, so then we'll move forward to the presentation then. Go ahead. Who do we have to present this morning?
Good morning, Madam Chair. It's Wendy Luther here with the Halifax Partnership.
Hi, Wendy. Welcome.
So great to see you and all of your committee members.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Well, let's sit back and enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. And for those, I believe I know all of you, we've had a chance to connect or speak. I'm Wendy Luther, President and CEO of Halifax Partnership. Halifax is public-private economic development organization. And joining me today is my colleague, Ian Monroe, Halifax Partnership's Chief Economist. In support of the staff report you received in your briefing package, we are delighted to have the opportunity to present to you the approach for the design and development of Halifax's 2022 to 2027 Economic Growth Plan, co-led by Halifax Partnership and Halifax Regional Municipality. The growth plan is being developed under the direction of the Ad Hoc Development Committee of Halifax Partnership's Board of Directors, chaired by Corey Bell, President and CEO of Lindsay Construction. This 2022-2027 plan will be Halifax's fourth economic strategy. The first was in 2005. Today's presentation is our second step in the approval process for the design and development of Halifax's next five-year growth plan. We received approval from Halifax Partnership's Board of Directors on January 27, 2021. We are very fortunate to have HRM's leadership on our board through Mayor Mike Savage, CAO Jacques Dubé, and Councillors Mason and Russell. And Ian will now provide an overview on Halifax's current economic environment. Over to you, Ian, and next slide, please.
Thank you, Wendy, and good morning, everyone. Can I just get a thumbs up that you can hear me okay? Fantastic, thank you.
All good, sir, all good.
Great, thank you. You'll recall that our 2016 to 21 growth plan has two headline targets, GDP growth and population growth. And the city level population updates from StatCan come out once every year. We got the latest batch just a few weeks ago. So these figures cover the year July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. And as you can see from the table on the slide, Halifax enjoyed another very good year of population growth, driven once more by strong international migration figures. These figures are down just slightly from the prior year, which was record-setting for population and immigration growth. However, population growth and immigration growth tend to have seasonal patterns, and you can see those when you look at the provincial level data that come out every quarter. So the summer quarter, July, August, September, is always the big driver, and that's really because of the influx of international students at the start of the school year. We know that September 2020 is going to be way down because of the pandemic, and as such, we can expect that the next set of annual population growth numbers are going to be down sharply when they come out in the winter of 2022, but we'll hope to quickly rebound after that. Although the Conference Board of Canada has not formally published its latest city-level economic forecast yet, they were kind enough to share some data on Halifax. Unsurprisingly, our GDP is estimated to have contracted by 3.5% in 2020. That's the worst recession we have in history. But a strong rebound is expected, though, with growth of 4.6% this year and 3.9% next year. I can also share that after a very deep decline in the spring, Halifax's labour market has recovered quite nicely, at least at the aggregate level. Using January 2020 as a benchmark, employment in Halifax had dropped by over 23,000 positions by May. We started to dig our way out of the hole through the summer, and by September we were back in positive territory. As of January 2021, we had 4,600 more jobs than was the case 1 year earlier. But remember that these are aggregate figures. Youth employment remains down by 6.4% from January to January, and sectors like accommodation and food services, wholesale and retail trade, and business and building support services remain down by more than 2,000 positions each. And you can see more detail on all these figures on the COVID-19 economic recovery tracker that's on the partnership's website. With that, I'll turn it back to Wendy.
Thank you so much, Ian. And next slide, please. On April 5th, 2016, Regional Council approved the Halifax Economic Growth Plan 2016-2021 as the 5-year economic strategy for Halifax. It envisions Halifax with a population of 550,000 and GDP of 30 billion by 2031. To achieve these growth outcomes, the Economic Growth Plan has 4 overarching 5-year goals and 73 actions, 37 of which are led by HRM and 30 by Halifax Partnership. The remaining 6 are co-led by the 2 organizations. As we were entering the final year of the plan and beginning the process of developing the new strategy, COVID hit. In May 2020, at Regional Council's direction, Halifax Partnership began developing a Halifax COVID-19 Economic Response and Recovery Plan, which we refer to as the ERRP. Created in consultation with key economic development stakeholders, the plan outlines 38 actions HRM and the Halifax Partnership will undertake to get back to Halifax's long-term growth trend and chart a path forward for a stronger, more resilient city. We look forward to providing an update on our progress on ERRP actions at an upcoming CPED meeting. Next slide, please. As noted in the staff report, there are multiple levels of accountability throughout the plan development process. CPED and Regional Council play a vital role in approving the approach for the development of the next 5-year growth plan, what we are discussing today, as well as providing input to and final approval of 2022-2027 Economic Growth Plan. HRM staff is also actively engaged on the working group, and GREA will draw on subject matter experts within the organization in support of the development of this plan. Next slide. The following 4 themes have come to the fore as areas needing particular attention as we work towards Halifax growth goals: attainable housing, transportation and logistics, green economy, and inclusive growth. Priorities and actions identified within these 4 themes will be integrated within the strategic goals of the new plan. Next slide. I'll now pass the floor over to Ian to describe the building blocks of the plan.
Thank you again, Wendy. So this slide provides an initial conceptual foundation for the next growth plan based on 5 building blocks. The first piece is to build on the momentum of the existing growth plan. Although we've made great strides on many fronts, the basic issues and challenges that were top of mind when the 2016-21 plan was being developed, demographic change, for example, remain fully relevant today. And given that many of our actions and tactics bore fruit, recall those very encouraging population growth numbers I shared a moment ago, we want to carry on with what has worked. We do not need to start from scratch. The success that we have had has also generated some growing pains and highlighted some other issues and themes. As we've achieved growth and success in the aggregate, who has perhaps been left behind and how do we close those gaps? More people is what we wanted, but that also has meant increased demand and hence lower availability of and higher prices for housing and more congested transportation networks. How do we ensure that Halifax remains an attractive and affordable place to live? And how do we ensure that continued economic growth is complementary to and not at the expense of achievement of environmental goals? Third, we always have to be mindful of basic economic fundamentals. What can we do to ensure that our tax and regulatory regimes, our infrastructure, and our municipal services are efficient, effective, and conducive to business growth and success? Just as we can build on a strong existing strategy, we can build on the experience, expertise, programs, and strategies that already exist in the partnership and across HRM's business units. With realignment, retooling is necessary to propel us to further success. As always, we will rely on strong partnerships with other groups and organizations as well. Finally, the world has changed since 2016, and it will continue to do so. Identifying, understanding, and flexibly adapting to changing circumstances, the massive increase in working from home, for example, will be an equally important building block for the next growth plan. And back to you once more, Wendy.
Thank you, Ian. And next slide, please. Building on the foundation elements Ian has identified, the strategic development includes the following key components: significant research and analysis, including a review of the current economic growth plan and other complementary plans, including Halifax, the ANS Road to Economic Prosperity Action Plan, Halifax's Tourism Master Plan, and monitoring of national and global economic trends, and analysis of the municipality's economic development strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Engagement and consultation may take the form of surveys, in-depth conversations with industry experts and key stakeholders. The Halifax Partnership will be hosting CEO councils and mayors' economic roundtables, as well as 6 to 8 sessions focused on identifying actions to advance inclusive economic growth. And we plan to utilize an online presence, such as Shape Your City Halifax, to communicate information and gather input. Thank you in advance for sharing this information with your constituents when it becomes available. From here, we'll synthesize the information and create the economic growth plan. Next slide. Building on the success and lessons learned from our previous 3 economic strategies, the 2022-2027 strategy will lay out a vision, values, 5-year strategic goals, and actions for years 1 and 2. This provides opportunity to reassess and or respond to emerging opportunities and or challenges early in the life of the strategy. Next slide. Throughout the engagement process, we will adhere to the following 4 guiding principles, ensuring the process is accessible, transparent, informed, and reflects the diversity of our community. Next slide. This slide outlines our proposed project timelines and milestones. CPED will be kept up to date throughout the process, and we always welcome your input and feedback. Next slide. And in conclusion, here's the recommendation included in the staff report. I thank you for your kind attention and your consideration, and we look forward to your questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Wendy, Ian. Now, Pam, did you want to ask your question now?
No, I'll wait till the motion's on the floor.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Cuddle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that it is recommended that the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to develop a 2022 to 2027 economic strategy in collaboration with the Halifax Partnership in accordance with the approach set out in the staff report and the related Halifax Partnership presentation.
All right, motion is on the floor. Do we have a seconder?
Seconded by Lovelace.
Councillor Lovelace to second. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Cuddle.
You're on mute.
On mute, my dear.
Yes. How did that happen? Thank you, Wendy. Wendy, Ian, so nice to see you again. And oh my gosh, it was almost a year ago that we were talking about this response and recovery plan. And anyway, it's good to see all the progress that is being made. And I'm really excited about this next economic strategy for Halifax for 2022 to 2027. I think there's lots of opportunity to do exciting things. You know, one of the you know, talking to residents, I have to say, you know, when we talk with the Halifax Partnership or the CAO or, you know, even the mayor or the chamber, we're all like applauding our economic growth. We're all like, you know, we're growing, like this is fantastic. And yet when we talk to, you know, the average citizen, they really aren't seeing the benefit of this. They're seeing increasing costs, increasing taxes, more frustration on our roads, you know, kind of the impacts of our growth. You know, they, as you rightly point out, they haven't been as a benefit to everybody, and there are people getting left behind. And in particular, I think when we look at this from a community perspective, the impact of growth hasn't been all positive, and people are wondering what the benefit is. You know, as a planner, I'm so excited to see you talking about things like attainable housing as part of the economic strategy. And you know, I know back, you know, in 2011 to 2016, like, you know, we were worried about a declining population, and that has changed and brought forward these new issues that I'm very excited to see are being considered now in our economic planning. You know, I'm also happy to see that you've recognized related initiatives like Halifax as being particularly important to our economic strategy as well. And I would love to see more emphasis on recognizing Halifax as a coastal city, as a coastal municipality, and that our long-term economic success will be tied to our response to sea level rise and climate change, not only making us an attractive place, but also, you know, kind of in securing those investments that, you know, people who move here make in our municipality. I didn't see the regional plan review on your list there. Did I might have missed it. I saw several initiatives, but I didn't see the regional plan review up there. And, you know, I think the current regional plan review that's happening now, and the major regional plan, you know, the one that's happening in 2026, where we're looking at a whole new regional plan, they really need to be tied to our economic strategy. And in particular, the focus, I would love to see a focus on local economies. You know, how not just COVID, but the growth of our city is going to impact our growth patterns, and how our growth patterns can support opportunities for local economic development as a means of building those livable communities, those connected transit communities, and hence a more livable city. You know, I know our competitiveness for attracting large companies depends on our ability to have housing available for workers, to have transportation systems. So, you know, I would, and if I'm going on, and I missed it, but I can't emphasize enough that I'd love to see you involved in that regional plan review in a major capacity, as we kind of sort out the long-term impacts of COVID on our economic development patterns in our municipality. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cuddle, for your comments. Noted with a big asterisk on including regional plan review. And I echo your words around this marriage between economic development, growth, housing, transportation linkage, and our competitive advantage as a jurisdiction. They are all inextricably linked. And that's why maybe for the first time, you're seeing some of these themes show up within the early stages of the proposed next proposed growth plan. In addition to Halifax, how are we capitalizing on our green economy as a competitive advantage, as a builder of jobs, raising Halifax up as a world leader in the green economy. And we have such a, an excellent guiding document and commitment through Halifax. So our early conversations around the next 5-year growth plan to date have brought that to the fore. And I thank you for making those points.
All right, thank you. Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you. I've just got a really quick question in regards to industry and industry development. One of the things that has featured quite prominently along St. Margaret's Bay Road is the fishing industry. And tourism over the years has kind of taken over as the fishing industry has ebbed and flowed. But with the changes, I think that have, been noted by many of the smaller communities along the coast, there are lots of opportunities for them to continue to enhance, added value to their, fishing businesses. And so I just wanted to flag for you the importance of fishing, not just from a recreational perspective. While yes, absolutely, we have a lot of lakes and beautiful rivers and streams and so on that we need to continue to protect. Certainly there's plenty of opportunity with the Green Network Plan and connectivity through more tourism elements as far as trails and parks and all that kind of stuff. But fishing industry is quite important to a number of these smaller communities, and that also leads to increase in tourism because people like to go and get fresh fish and stay at a beautiful B&B in Indian Harbor, for example. So I just wanted to get a sense from you as to whether or not that's on your radar. I did see mention of fish processing, and so I just wanted to get a better sense from you. I also have to jump off the call because the mayor's about to ring me in a second, but I'm just wondering if you can speak to that. So I'm here and listening, but I might be away.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lovelace. And so we work with a wide variety of sectors through our free programming, particularly business attraction retention work, but also through our research and development work and connecting small business, including in the fishing industry, to the research and development capacity of our post-secondary institutions. And one example that came to mind as you were speaking was work we're doing with Atlantic sea cucumbers in rural HRM and connecting them to NSCC. And I look forward to sharing more on that story with you that helps that company's competitiveness in export markets and streamlined their production facility through working with students and our post-secondary capabilities. So look forward to speaking with you more on this and how we can get those opportunities to more businesses in your district. And also, your point about authentic tourism is so important. When people come and visit our beautiful city, and what makes us so unique is this balance between urban and rural, which is just not what is seen in major urban centers across our country. But people come to see and visit these unique experiences. And so that marrying of fishery and tourism is important as well. And I know that's being investigated through the Tourism Master Plan. And of course, we work very closely with Discover Halifax, and I was a part of that advisory board on that work. So look forward to speaking with you more and how do we connect more of your companies to some of these opportunities.
Yes, and also the infrastructure, right? So the wharves, which we're seeing are moving away from industrial use to becoming park assets. And so as we move down that direction where these wharves are no longer, permitted to be used by fishing boats, then where are the fishers supposed to go? And so I just want to be cognizant of, yes, there's the fishing, the industry itself, there's the processing, there's all the added value, but there's also the infrastructure and the assets that are required around that fishing. So I'll just leave that with you and look forward to talking more about sea cucumbers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no further speakers on the list, we do have a motion on the floor and seconded. So I think it's time to call for the question. And the question has been called for. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? No opposed, then motion is carried. Thank you very much, Wendy, Ian, much appreciated. Always great to see you at CPED.
Thank you so much, Councillor Blackburn and committee members. We look forward to seeing and presenting to you again soon.
All right, thank you so much. Take care. All right, so that was 12.1.1. 12.2, members of standing committee motions, we have none. 12.3, Community Design Advisory Committee, we have nothing from them to report. Heritage Advisory Committee, 12.4, nothing there. We have no other motions, no reason to go in camera, no added items. Item 16, notices of motion. Do we have any notices of motion from the committee? Not seeing any. All right. In that case, the date of our next meeting is March the 11th, 2021. So thank you so very much for joining us this morning, and we'll see you again in March, and looking now for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Councillor Cuddle makes the motion to adjourn. Thank you so very much. Thank you to Simon and the clerk's team for keeping us on the air. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.